Hi everyone, Andy Trice back again, and today I want to do a crash course in video. Now, this is going to be a really quick overview of taking a composition and creating it from raw video clips in Adobe Premiere Pro. And this is really going to be targeting people who aren't familiar with the video production process. It can be really nuts and bolts. Here's the workspace. Here's how you pull in a video. Here's how you chop it up. Here's how you export it. And really this is intended for anyone who's a Creative Cloud member, and let's say you're using Photoshop or Illustrator or Flash, something like that every day, and you really want to start exploring more video production. Hopefully this gets your ideas rolling. What I'm going to do is take some video I've captured with this. This is a DJI Phantom. It's a remote controlled helicopter, and I was flying it around Nevada last week. And I got some really great footage, and I'm just going to piece it together, export a video so that you can see how to get started with the editing process. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at Premiere. We'll dive in and start putting together a simple video. So the first thing I'm going to do is launch Premiere, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. I'll select the directory that I want to put this. We'll just on the desktop, we'll create a new folder and call it video. And I'll call this my sample video. That'll be the name of my video project. And what this is going to do is create a new video project in Premiere. What I'm going to do is take a video file that I've already pulled onto my hard drive from the GoPro camera, and I'm just going to drag that into the project window inside of Premiere in the bottom left-hand corner. So I'll go ahead and drag it in, and we just drop it, and we jump back to Premiere, and this will import the video file. It's imported. We can now see that we have a clip here for editing. To edit a video, the first thing you have to do is create a sequence. The sequence is going to specify the resolution and the frame rate for the piece of video that you're composing. And it's also going to have a timeline, and on that timeline you can drag clips, you can lengthen or shorten the clips, change playback speed, and that's really where you start compositing things together. The first thing that we want to do is create a new sequence. So I'm going to right click on the clip I just imported and select New Sequence from Clip. What this is going to do is create a new sequence that is the same dimensions and frame rate as the source clip that I originally clicked on. Now before I go any further, let's take a look at the workspace that we have here. And this is using the default editing workspace configuration for Premiere. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have the project browser. This shows all the clips and sequences that are part of my composition at this point. If you want to pull more files in here, whether they're audio files or images or video files, you can just drag and drop them into this project browser, or you can go to File, Import, and once they're imported, then they're going to show up in the project browser. On the bottom right-hand side, we have our timeline. And in the timeline, we can scrub through time for the video, and we can see that there's different layers. In each one of these layers, I could drag different clips, and you can see that we now have multiple clips in the same timeline, and I can just drag these to move them. Or if you notice, if you mouse over the edge of a clip, you get a little red icon where the mouse is, and you can drag that to change the duration of that clip, so you can change the entry points of when that clip would start playing. Let me go ahead and clear the one that I just dragged onto here, and so we're left with the original clip. On the top right, we have the program monitor, and the program monitor shows the actual content of this video clip. So as I scrub through the time, you can see the program monitor content opens. In the top left, we have the effects controls, and in the effects controls we can see the different effects, whether it's a position, this is an XY position, the scaling, rotation, opacity, and with opacity you can say, is it fully opaque, partially opaque? You can actually have different kinds of blend modes, so if I drag this one back here and I select the top video, I can make it less opaque so you can see a blending of the two videos, or I can change the blend mode to, let's say, darken, and you can see how that affects the content in the program monitor. I'm jumping ahead of myself, so let me get back to here. select the original clip, and we can see that we have our video effects. Now, in the top left, I can also view the source monitor. So in this case, if I double click on my clip itself on the bottom left in the project browser, you can see that I have on the top left the source monitor, and on the top right the program monitor. The source monitor is going to be that clip that I just double clicked on. The program monitor is going to be the actual program that's in the timeline, so the composition that I'm working on at this point. I can go ahead and close that source monitor because I don't need it yet. What I can also do is jump to the audio clip mixer, and you can see here when I select my sequence, you can see the different audio sources that there are. In this case, we only have one audio source that corresponds with the one clip that we've pulled in, and this is where you could adjust volume levels. I can also go ahead and browse metadata associated with the clips and the sequences. What I'm going to do is keep it on the effects controls because I'm going to be editing a little bit. And now I want to start editing my composition. So I'm going to zoom out on the timeline so I can see my entire clip. And I want to break this up into a couple different pieces to make the video a little bit more streamlined. You'll notice if you hear this audio and I hit play, that you can just hear wind from the helicopter blades. What we're going to do in a little bit is take that out and replace it with a piece of music for the audio track. But what I first want to do is find where the helicopter takes off. And I'm going to go ahead and just shorten the video so that the video actually starts right where my helicopter is taking off. So I had that a bit too early. Let me go ahead and start it right here. But I only want that initial takeoff sequence. So what I'm going to do is, once the helicopter is off the ground, I want to split this video. So I'm going to go over to the razor tool. If you notice, there's the tools panel that's directly in between the project browser and the sequence a timeline, and I'm going to select the razor tool. And I have the playhead aligned with where I want to cut this video in half. So I want playback to... I want to break this into two separate clips on the timeline. So the razor tool, I just click on it, and now I've got two separate clips, and they have two different sets of attributes. I can drag the second one after I've split it in half, and it doesn't affect the first clip, where the first clip is the actual takeoff sequence. Now let's go ahead and find some interesting pieces for the video. Let's say I want to start playback right here where I'm over the ridge, and I want it to play all the way down till I get into the valley here. Oh, but before I make the turn and come back. So let's say right there, that's a good spot. And I'm going to go ahead and slice it again. And I'm going to go back to the selection tool, and with the selection tool I can drag it and align it so that I have the takeoff sequence that goes into the first flying sequence, and let's find a second flying sequence. In this case, let's jump ahead in the video to where I was coming back for a landing. So I will go ahead and shorten this video. You notice when I mouse over the edge of the clip in the sequence, you can see where I can change the duration. So I'm going to go ahead and change the duration of that clip. Let me jump ahead in the video. And now I want the video to end right when the helicopter is caught. So I'm going to go ahead and shorten that. And again, I'm just going to drag this clip so it directly follows the previous clip. Now you notice if I hit play here, we're flying through the valley, and then the video is immediately going to just jump to the next clip in the sequence. Now, What I want to do is have these two pieces of video blend into each other seamlessly. So I'm going to go to the Effects window. If you notice, I have my project browser, and if I go to the Effects tab, I can select from different kinds of effects. Now, there's audio effects where you can change everything from audio volume to panning left and right, or adding special effects like reverb or delay. I can also look at video effects where I could put color correction or kind of cinematic types of effects or distortion. And I've also got video transitions. And the first thing I want to look at is a video transition. And I want these video clips to dissolve into each other. So I'm going to select Cross Dissolve, and I'm just going to drag Cross Dissolve and put it in between the two video clips that I want to edit. So I just dragged it between the first and second, and I'm going to drag it in between the second and third. Now, if I zoom in on the timeline, you'll be able to see right at the intersection of those two video clips, I have the cross dissolve effect. And from here, you can, if I select the cross dissolve effect, I did that just by tapping on the cross dissolve effect instance on the timeline. You can see you can adjust the alignment, the duration, how long does it take to dissolve in between one clip and another. And I'll go ahead and, I could adjust that if I want to, but for now I'm going to leave it with the default settings. And if I hit play, you'll see that it seamlessly faded from one clip into the next. But now I actually think that dissolve it was too fast. So instead of half a second, because this is at 60 frames per second, I want it to be 1 second. And now I will go ahead and play this, and you can see that it slowly dissolved from one scene to the next. I'm going to jump to the first transition, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I want that to be 1 second. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier, you can see that I've got 1 second, and before it said 30 for the duration. This actually meant 30 frames, because which I said was half a second, because the video that I originally captured was a 1080p video at 60 frames per second. So 30 frames would be half of a second. Now, if I play back this video, we can see that we've got the nice takeoff sequence. That's going to fade into the first flight sequence, which will play through, and then that will fade into the second flight sequence. But I actually think that this video, there's a couple things wrong with it. The first thing is that I don't like the audio. I don't like the helicopter wind noise. So I'm going to mute that audio track. So what I'm going to do is take an audio file that I already have on my computer. This is just a WAV file from iStock Audio. So it's just background music. I drag that into my project window, and now the audio file is a part of the composition, and I can start using it. So I'm just going to take the audio file, drag it onto the sequence and timeline, and when I hit play this time, you can hear that the background music is playing as the video plays. We're not hearing the audio from the helicopter itself because I've muted that track. So we can see on the timeline itself, if we look here, there's a couple little options that we have. We can lock the timeline, we can lock the track. There's M, where we can mute the track, or we can S, which is solo the track. And when it's solo, even if I were playing all of them at one point, if I hit S to solo, you're only going to hear the soloed track. Likewise, when we're working with the timeline for the video clips, you can see we have a couple options. We can lock track. We can also toggle that track's visibility. So I can just toggle on or off by clicking on the little icon, or excuse me, the eyeball for track output. Now, if you notice, my music clip is actually longer than the video clips that I have here. And so I don't want that to happen. And actually, I feel like the playback for the flight is a little bit too slow for my taste. So I want to speed it up. There's a couple ways that you can control time. You can get really complex with it and change it variably throughout playback. But I want to do something simple. I just want the entire clip to play just a little bit faster. So what I'm going to do is right-click on the clip instance in the sequence, and I'm going to go to speed/duration. And I want this to play at 150% of its original speed. And I'm also going to select Ripple Edit Shift Trailing Clips. And what this is going to do is when it shortens the clip for the faster speed, any clips that are behind it in the playback sequence will be automatically shifted and aligned in time so that there's a seamless transition between all of them and everything aligns nicely. So I'll go ahead and hit OK, and we'll see that this clip is now shorter. So we've got a takeoff sequence that's in normal time. We've got the second sequence, which is a little bit faster. We'll go ahead and hit play here, and you can see it's a little bit shaky. That's from the copter itself. At a later date, I'll go ahead and talk about stabilization of video, but for now, we're just going to leave it as it is. But I also want to speed up the second video in, I'm going to speed up the second clip in this sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and select speed/duration. I'm going to go to 150% again, and you can see that now our video is shorter. It's only about 1 minute and 20 seconds. Now what I want to do is align the audio to the video playback. So I can just mouse over the end of the audio sequence, and we've got the little red icon indicating that we can change the length of the audio sequence, and I'm going to drag it, and it will snap to align with the video sequence. And what I want to do is actually have this fade out at the very end of playback. I'm going to do two things. I want the video to fade out, and I want the audio to fade out. So I will go ahead and select the video, I will go ahead and select the audio in the sequence, and you'll see that in the effects controls, we have the effects for that particular audio clip visible. And what I want to do is adjust the volume. Now, when you're editing a video and you're editing the different effects, whether it's on a video clip or an audio clip, you have what are called keyframes. And keyframes are the settings for a particular effect at a point in time. So what I'm going to do is, on the very last frame of this sequence, I'm going to add a keyframe just by clicking on the little Add Remove Keyframe diamond-shaped button for the volume level. And what I want that to do is I want that volume to shift over a 2-second period. So I'm going to jump in the timeline backwards 2 seconds. And I'm going to add a second keyframe. If I zoom in on the timeline and the effects controls, you can see that we have the two keyframes. There's the one I just added, and the first one I added, which is at the end of the clip. So I want to jump to the one at the end of the clip, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the volume all the way down. And now when this plays, the audio volume is going to decrease linearly so that at the end of the clip, it's completely silent. Now I want to do the same thing with the video. So I'm going to select my video clip, and in this case I'm going to select opacity. And what I'm going to do is change the opacity because there's a black background on the video composition, and I'm just going to make it slowly fade out to 0% opaque, which means it's just going to be totally black. So on the very last frame, I've added a keyframe, and in this case I want the fade out to only be 1 second. So I'm going to jump back 1 second in the time for the sequence. I'm going to go ahead and add another keyframe, and in the last keyframe I'm going to set opacity as 0. And now you'll see that as I'm playing the video, the audio is fading out and the video fades out at the end. Now, this video is coming together nicely, but one thing that I want to do is add a title. And I can do that by going to my project window, right-clicking and selecting New Item, and then adding a new title. And this title, we'll just leave it as Title. And I'm going to go ahead and add some text. And I'll call this Flying Through Nevada. I want to center this text, but I also want to change the font. Let's go ahead and make it, I want Helvetica. and I want to do Helvetica Light. And we'll go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. We'll recenter it. Change the alignment to actually centered. We have to recenter it again because the size changed. And I want this color to actually be black instead of white. So we'll hit OK. We have black. Still doesn't stand out quite enough. Let me go ahead and we'll leave it at light. I'll go ahead and change that back to just an off-white, light gray, and we will add a shadow, a black shadow to it. And I'll make the shadow a bit stronger and also a bit bigger so that the text stands out. So now that we've created this title, in order to add it to the sequence, all I have to do is drag it to my sequence timeline. And I'm going to add it in a layer above my initial video clip. So we can see just by adding the title to the sequence, it's now part of that sequence and we're seeing it in the program window output. What I want to do is lengthen the title so it's during the entire takeoff sequence. Go a little bit longer. And what I want that title to do is fade out at the end. And I can do this one of two ways. I can either go and change the opacity on the timeline with keyframes, or I can jump back to my video transition effects and I'm going to do cross dissolve again. Whoops. Should just be able to drag it, drop it right on the end of that. And you can see that the text flying through Nevada will actually fade out during the playback of the sequence. Now the last thing that I want to do to really add some character to this video is play with color effects. And so I'm going to go to the Lumetri looks inside of the effects panel. And what this is are predefined color settings using the Lumetri color engine. This is the same color engine that's used by SpeedGrade, and it really gives you high quality color correction, and it's very easy to apply to your video sequences. I'm just going to go ahead and select, I can click on one of these and see a preview of what it's going to do to the different file, and see a preview of what it's going to do to each clip. For instance, day for night is going to make it look like it's nighttime. Compression is going to compress the colors. What I want to do is go for a cinematic look. So I'm going to go for Cinematic 2, and I'm going to go ahead and drop that on the clip. And you can see what that did in the program window. It really brought out contrast and made things a little bit lighter in some areas, darker in some areas. I'll go ahead and drag that to each one of the clips in playback. And if I go through and select this clip and I turn off the Lumetri effect, you can really see a difference in the contrast for the clip that I've selected. And I'll go ahead and add that again to the last clip. So I've now got a much more cinematic look to the clips. Again, I can go ahead and toggle this. You can see the difference that it makes. So I've got a much more cinematic look. I've got clips that fade into each other, and I've got a title. And it was all really pretty easy to compose this and put everything together. Now, if I want to export this, all that I have to do is go to the sequence, just click in the sequence, or I can go to my project window and select the sequence, then go to File and select Export and Export Media. Now this is going to bring up the export settings dialog, and what I want to do is export this for use on the web. You could export it as an uncompressed video file, but if you're targeting the web, you want to use a preset that's already encoded for the web. So I'm going to select the H.264 codec, or excuse me, H.264 format, which is a codec that is optimized for web distribution of video. And I'm going to use a preset. In this case, I'm going to upload the video to YouTube. So let me go ahead and select the YouTube HD 1080p 29.97 settings. And what this is a preset for a 1080p video, which is 1920 by 1080 pixel dimensions. at 29.97 frames per second. So when people talk about 30 frames per second with video, a lot of the video is actually 29.97 frames per second. And you can see now that once I've selected it, there's the output settings. You can see where it's going to be exported to. You can see the 1920 by 1080. You can see the frames per second. And you can see some details on the encoding. Now, the last thing I want to do is actually rename this video and change where it's going to be exported to. So let me go to Desktop, my video folder, and I'm going to call this Flying Through Nevada. We'll hit Save. And at this point, I'm now ready to export my video file. So I'll go ahead and I can either queue this up, and this will add to an Adobe Media Encoder queue, or I can click Export. And what I'm going to do is hit Export. It's going to render the audio, and after that, it's going to start encoding the video. Okay, so now that's finally complete rendering the video. So let's jump over to Finder, and we can look at the video that was just created. We have Flying Through Nevada, and let me go ahead and play the video. So there you have it. That's the process of creating a video by importing it, chopping it up, editing the pieces together, and then exporting the final product. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's go ahead and take a look at the final video. Thanks.